There are two reasons why Iran is targeting assets in the Gulf regions, and the media is not really explaining it. The way that Iran sees this is that they need to do two things to stop the attacks by the US and Israel on Iran. The first one is to degrade the military capability of the US and Israel. And the way they see it is that without the help from the Gulf states, where they're supporting and facilitating those attacks on Iran, US and Israel would not be able to strike Iran. Let's explain how. The first thing is that the Iranians see that the airspace of the Gulf countries are being used to attack Iran. If the Gulf states said no airspace is going to be used from our side, then these attacks would be really reduced, in the same way that Turkey said no airspace is going to be used, and therefore the Americans and Israelis are not using the Turkish airspace. And number two, when even Israel sends its jets to do those attacks, they don't have enough fuel to go all the way to Iran and come back. There has to be air fuel tankers that meet them halfway to refuel the jets so that they can do that return. Those air fuel tankers are based in those Gulf countries, and the refueling is happening in those Gulf countries. How do we know this? Well, we can see it from the trackers. We can see from flight radar that the airspace is being used by these jets, and these fuel tankers are fueling in the airspace of the Gulf countries. And those fuel tankers that refuel the jets are also based in the Middle East, as has been provided by the Chinese, indicating what airplanes, where they're based, and a lot of them are based in the Gulf countries. That's why the Iranians are saying that they're attacking the US bases in the Middle East. On top of that, the US has about 50,000 US military around the Gulf countries. They are there to ensure that these operations against Iran cause massive damage. The central command of when these jets fly, where they refuel, all done by people on the ground from these US bases. But it turns out also that to protect the US personnel, the Americans have moved a lot of US personnel from those US bases in hotels, which is why the Iranians are saying they're attacking certain hotels that are housing these US personnel. And this was actually confirmed by the US, where it said CIA personnel were injured in hotels in the Middle East. There are also US radars in the Gulf countries. These are the radars that identify when missiles are launched by Iran. Iran has attacked all those radar systems, and some of them cost $500 million, such as the one in Qatar that was destroyed. So the Iranians see that the Americans are using the Gulf countries to launch this operation against Iran, and therefore Iran is trying to push away those US bases and destroy the US bases to ensure that those attacks are limited. On top of it, US Central Command has published photos of them using the ground in the desert in some Gulf countries to launch missiles into Iran. Here they say US Army high mobility artillery rocket systems provide unrivaled deep strike capability in combat against the Iranian regime. They're also here showing launches from the desert into Iran. This, they say, in a historic first, long-range precision strike missiles were used in combat during Operation Epic Fury, providing an unrivaled deep strike capability. The US is publishing these pictures and videos. These are not defense missiles that shoot down Iranian missiles. These are missiles launched from, appears, the Gulf countries to attack Iran directly on their ground. That is US military degradation. The second thing that the Iranians are trying to do is US economic degradation. The way that the Iranians see the Gulf states is that they fund the US economy and the US government. How do they do that? Well, all the petrol that comes out of the Gulf, which equals to around $1 trillion a year, goes back into the US. That's the power of the dollar being the reserve currency. When they sell goods, they get dollars. They have to sell the goods in dollars. They don't keep those US dollars in the Gulf countries. They reinvest it back into the US financial system and buy US debt, which means that the US government can borrow very cheaply and can use that trillions of dollars into buying US military equipment and producing weapons. And so if Iran stops those trillions of dollars going into those US weapon purchases by closing the Strait of Hormuz, then they can put pressure on the US government to limit its military production capability. They also want to create a deterrence. So when Israel attacked the gas infrastructure of Iran, Iran said that if that happens, we're going to attack the infrastructure of the Gulf countries, especially those that have US investments in those assets. The reason why it believes this is a good idea is that it creates a deterrence from future attacks on its infrastructure, which is actually what happened. Because when they did that, Trump went on Truth Social and said Israel acted incorrectly by attacking the infrastructure. They're not going to do this again. And so the strategy of Iran worked, that, hey, if you attack our infrastructure, your infrastructure is going to be attacked, and that's going to impact the US economy, because all those trillions of dollars that are being generated are not going to be reinvested back in the financial system and used to buy US debt. It also has a secondary effect, which increases oil prices, increases inflation, and that hits US consumers, which puts pressure on the US government to stop those attacks. Iran's view is that, hey, you don't care about our children dying, our people dying. What you care about is the money in your pocket. And so if we hurt that, then US people might actually, US population might actually be angry at what's happening in Iran and the attacks that are carried out by Israel and the US. This strategy has worked so well for the Iranians that because there's very limited oil production from the Gulf, there's limited gas production from the Gulf, Trump wants to ensure that oil doesn't go really high because that impacts his presidency and the US economy. He's now moving towards unsanctioning Iranian oil. Iranian oil has been under sanctions for many years, but because he wants to keep the price low, he's saying basically any oil that's already on fleets, that's going to be on sanctions, and so people can buy it without any issues. That's how bad the situation is, and he's done the same thing for Russian oil. Iran's strategy is very clear, and they've said this from the start, before even the war started. They're going to attack each layer in the US military system, starting with the radars in the Gulf areas, then the US bases that allow the US to carry out its operation, and deplete the defense missiles that the US and Israel has by throwing so many missiles, cheap old missiles, at those systems to deplete the interceptors. And then Iran's going to use its more advanced weaponry that does more damage. And we can see it from this graph. This is the daily military munitions launched since the start of the war. The green is the drones, and the red is the ballistic missiles. You can see at the start, from the first day, there was a very high number. For drones, there's more than 500 on the second day. And then it went really down, and then start to slowly now increase, as we're seeing from about March 15. There's a big increase now in drones, and now an increase in the ballistic missiles. The reason why the missiles decrease is not because America was destroying the launchers, which are very easily produced, even if you destroy a lot of them. The hard part of launching the missiles is not the launcher, it's the missiles that need quite a bit of a technical understanding of how to create them. A launcher is just a vehicle that's been transformed to be able to shoot a missile. The reason why there was a decrease is because at the beginning, there were already certain launchers on the ground that were throwing those very old ballistic missiles. But for the more advanced missiles, they had to get those advanced launchers from underground to the places where they need to launch them. They didn't want them exposed at the beginning because then they would be destroyed. And so it took time to take out those more advanced launchers and more advanced capabilities to throw those more advanced missiles that have a much bigger impact. And the reason why there was a huge increase at the huge amount of drones and missiles at the beginning is because they were trying to use up these defense interceptors used in the Gulf areas and in Israel. And so the strategy was to destroy the radars so that Israel and the US cannot detect the launch missiles. These are radars all across the Gulf countries and in Israel. And then use more missiles to use up the defense interceptors to shoot those missiles, use those up, and then use more of the advanced missiles to then target the specific targets that you want to target. And so as the days go by, we're going to see a bigger and bigger impact, especially in Israel, as they have now used up a lot of their interceptors, and the radars are pretty much all destroyed. So that's why we're also seeing less of a time between when the sirens go off in Israel and a missile drops. Sometimes there isn't even a siren that's happening because of the destruction of those radar systems. And at the same time that Trump was saying that Iran doesn't have any more defense systems, we are roaming the Iranian country with our jets freely. An F-35 was shot. That was supposed to be a stealth airplane, and so it shouldn't have been shot, but it was. The truth is that the jets are not flying all across Iran. What they're doing is that they're coming across to the border and they're launching these missiles that go hundreds of kilometers to their target. They're not actually really entering into the airspace of Iran because they would be shot down. That's also why all the attacks are happening on the western front of Iran and not the eastern part, because the air jets are not daring to enter deep into the airspace of Iran. So when they say that they've destroyed all the missile cities that Iran has underground, you know that's a lie, because a lot of them will also be in the eastern part of Iran. Iran is a huge country, 4 times bigger than as big as Iraq. And so there are many parts that haven't been touched. And that's also why we're now seeing an increase in missiles. These missiles are only going to increase in numbers and impact because the defense interceptors are going down, the radars are destroyed, and Iran is using now more and more of their advanced missiles to hit their targets. The biggest issue for the US isn't even all of this, it's the Strait of Hormuz, which is now controlled by Iran. Iran had the capability of controlling the Strait of Hormuz before, but it never did until now, until the attacks by Israel. Controlling the Strait of Hormuz means controlling what goes out of the Gulf states. And Iran is now saying that anything coming out of the Gulf states has to be denominated in Chinese yuan, not dollars, which is a direct impact on the US economy. Because again, these are trillions of dollars that used to go, that have to be done in dollars, traded in dollars, that used to go into the US financial system and buy US debt, is now being denominated in Chinese yuan, which means they will go to China. And it's also deciding if you're attacking Iran, then your goods are not going to be allowed to come out of the Gulf area through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, there's another way to transport your oil is through the Red Sea, but there is the Houthis in Yemen, Ansar Allah, who can close the Red Sea when they start entering into this war, which will be very soon. Netanyahu, in a press event, said that they're going to try to build a pipe that goes from the Gulf countries all across to Jordan into Israel, so that we don't need to use the Strait of Hormuz and can directly have ships go to Israel to take that oil. Well, that's not going to work because you still need the facilities to work. And if the facilities are attacked, then there is no there's no oil production, there's no gas production. So Iran can, if it wants, ensure that there is no oil coming out or gas coming out, especially if their infrastructure is being destroyed, if Iran's infrastructure is being destroyed by Israel. There is no choice but for the Gulf states to have peace with Iran to ensure safety and no damage or attacks on the infrastructure. Some people will say, but what Iran's doing to the Gulf states is going to result in the Gulf states joining the war. The truth is the Gulf states cannot do anything more than what Israel and the US is already doing. Their military capability is much more limited than Israel and the US. So what are they going to do that Israel and the US are not already doing? And if they directly get involved in the war, even though Iran sees it that they're already kind of part of the war because they're facilitating and helping the US and Israel do those attacks on Iranian soil. But if they directly get involved, now Iran can target much more capability, assets and targets of the Gulf countries, and that will ensure that the Gulf countries cannot operate on the same model of safety and peace to bring in people and to bring in money into those countries. So that's why I believe the Gulf countries are going to take a more pragmatic approach of patience, trying to put pressure on the US and Israel to stop this, because there is no way that they can be part of this directly of attacking Iran without having huge impact on their economy, not just now, but for the future. Because all it takes is a drone to attack an asset or infrastructure where people will say, hey, it's not safe here, we're not going to live here. And drones it's $5,000 a piece. So it's very easily made, very quickly done, and essentially unlimited amount of drones can be used. So it'll be interesting to see how the Gulf, what pressure the Gulf countries can apply, because it seems like Israel is the only country that can put pressure on the US and dictate terms for the US on what to do and how to do things.